So hi, Eythan. Thank you for coming on to the Stories of Northern Life podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start off right at the beginning with, are you from the Sioux and what was childhood like?
Yeah, I'm from the Sioux. I was born here. I didn't always live here. I did move to Sudbury for a little bit, but my childhood, I grew up with 4 other siblings. I was the youngest, so I'm the troublemaker and the one that likes to scare everybody and, beat them at everything. But I had a little bit of a different childhood, I guess. My oldest brother has autism and bipolar, and he has a seizure disorder. So it's, when I say autism, nowadays it's very different than what we thought it was, because a lot of people now you almost wouldn't even be able to tell. But with my brother Kyle, he's nonverbal, and that's a result of the other things going on. So he's got a bit of brain damage from those seizures. But that definitely made the childhood a little bit different growing up. We were homeschooled, so we were at home constantly with Kyle and with my other siblings until Charity started going to high school. But yeah, definitely made it a little bit challenging. But my parents did a great job. We lived a pretty comfortable life, I would say. We always had a nice place to live. It was always warm. We always had food. Like, that was never a huge struggle. So I guess a lot of people look at my life and they're like, wow, it looks like you just had everything handed to you. And I kind of did. Like, a lot of things were always provided for me. I didn't have to worry about it too much, but they don't see the other side of the life with growing up with an older brother who took a lot of my parents' attention. Right. And being the youngest, I think I've heard my mother talk about this, and she wrote a book about Kyle, which I saw was one of your questions. And she talks about the challenges of, by the time that I was born, and how difficult Kyle was. Because growing up, they almost couldn't tell. He was talking quite a bit until he was about 12. And then when puberty hit, hormones started changing. That's when things got a lot worse. But growing up, he took a lot of their attention. So I can tell that my mom and my dad really feel that I didn't get to see them as much and spend as much time with them, although I felt like I did. I didn't feel neglected or anything. I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I never get to see my dad, or we never get to do things. Because we did. We'd have boys' night. We'd go out and we'd go to Rutgers, I think was the arcade at the time. And then it turned into McCool's. But we'd go to Rutgers, or we'd go to other places like A&W. We'd get our burgers. We'd go watch a movie. And my dad was able to keep Kyle with us. My dad's a really big guy. I don't want to get this wrong, Dad, but at one point, I think he was 280 pounds. So he's really big, and Kyle is about my size, a little bit bigger. So my dad could handle him, and if we were out somewhere, he would just kind of hold on to him. But I guess that would look a little bit strange to anybody watching. It's like, why is this man just holding another grown man pretty much in place? So it definitely presented some challenges. But we grew up here, got to go to Bon Sioux as a kid, do the bum slides, do just pretty regular, I guess, for growing up in the Sioux. I was homeschooled till grade 6. Then I went to Greenwood Public School. Okay. And I didn't enjoy it too much. I liked having people there. The reason I went was all my siblings went to school and I was alone, and I wanted to go and have people to talk to and, have a social life. Yep. And when I got there, the teacher at the time would punish us by taking away our gym class. So we'd be talking too much. There would be a timer on the smart board. The timer would go until we stopped talking. Then she'd pause and be like, okay, you guys were talking for 13 minutes. Now you're going to lose 13 minutes of gym class. So I was like, all right, I'm going back to homeschool for grade 7. And then grade 8 went back again to Greenwood for the teacher that I had. He was awesome. We always had gym class. He was a great teacher. I enjoyed it. It was perfect. And then went to Cora for high school.
Nice.
And then once I was done at Cora, I went to Sault College for fitness and health promotion. And I was doing personal training for about 8 years, from 17 till 25 or so, when I switched jobs, which I can get more into later.
Definitely.
But yeah, I don't know if I covered everything there, but there's lots to cover. I could go on about high school and sports and whatnot, but I think that's a good summary of the main bit was homeschooled and my brother. Yeah.
So what were like some of your extracurricular activities? Were you in any like artistic fields, or was it mainly sports at that point in your life?
I had nothing artistic that I was doing at the time. It was all sports. My sister Charity went to Lake State Superior University just across the border, and she did exercise science. And when she did that, I was about 12, I'd say, when she first got in there. And she came back from school the first day and told my dad that he was going to die because he was drinking too much Coke.
Stop.
And he loves Coca-Cola. And so that kind of really flipped our lives, I think, at that time. A little bit before we started going to a CrossFit gym through a friend that introduced us to it. And we loved it. I think it was in grade 7. So I would have been 11 or 12, and we'd get up at 5 in the morning, go to the gym, work out, and then get back in time for school. And being homeschooled in grade 7 again, I could just do it all in the morning and be done. So it wasn't a huge issue going to the gym in the morning. But we did a lot of sports. I did jiu-jitsu as well for a little bit. That was probably my favorite one, but the gym moved and I wasn't able to go anymore. So I do really miss that, but that was a lot of fun. In high school, I did track, cross country, and basketball.
Awesome.
Nothing in college, just did fitness and health promotion. But again, nothing artistic at all. I didn't take a photography class. There was no videography class, that's for sure. I had no interest in it. If I look back, I did have somewhat of a pull towards content creation. I did experiment on Vine when that was a thing with a friend.
Yeah.
He would come over and we'd make some videos at my grandma's pool and just dumb things. And if I saw them now, I'd cringe. But I was like 16, 15 at the time.
Yeah.
But it was there were hints that here and there of some artistic work, but I didn't do anything. I thought it wasn't good creatively. I didn't know what to do because I couldn't draw. And in school, that's what I thought creative people did. They would draw, they would make really cool pieces of art that are typically on a canvas or on some sort of board, which I just couldn't do. And like if you saw my handwriting, it's terrible. Like, I don't have good handwriting. I don't have any drawing skills, nothing. So I just believed I wasn't that creative.
Yeah.
No creative classes at all throughout any of my school. I think only music was and I did drums.
Amazing.
Like you're just bang
the
on
loudest
the drums.
Yeah.
Being the youngest kid, that was tough. I didn't want to be annoying in the class, but it was like I'm ready to just. It was like an urge to like I could annoy people right now and just start hitting on everything. It's weird how that works, but that was the only creative thing that I did in school.
Yeah. Interesting. So what brought you to start creating content then? When did that come into play?
Content really started. And this is going to be for the viewers, this is going to be jumping around quite a bit.
Yeah.
After my late wife passed away, I started doing ninja content. I was working at a ninja gym, and I actually started doing something creative there. Every week I had to reset the gym and think of new obstacles and set up a cool course for them.
Wow.
And that was my creative outlet at the time. And I actually realized this is like, I'm enjoying it. I have a creative outlet. So I kind of started to see hints of it there. But the content creation happened because I wanted to be able to tell Jasmine's story and I didn't know how to get an audience. So I thought, I could start with ninja. Like that's kind of interesting. It's new. People are interested in it. And if I can learn how to make good content and build up a following, let's say on YouTube, that would be really great. Because then I can, let's say if I get to 100,000 subscribers, then I can kind of tell them like, hey, this is another side of my life that you don't know about. I've done ninja content, but you don't know Jasmine's story. And then I could tell that many people. So that was my plan. And then partway through that, I realized that a guy that I was working with, he was, I think 13 or 14 at the time, had this app called TikTok. And I didn't know what it was. I just saw the female coaches that we had dancing and doing all this stuff. I just thought it was some silly little app. And I saw that he went kind of viral. He got 1 million views on a piece of gaming content. And I thought, what? Like, okay, that's interesting. Like you can just get views. It's a new app, and at the time I think TikTok was looking for their creators, so they would just experiment and let different people go viral and see if somebody would get into the creation, because a lot of the big creators were on YouTube, Instagram, whatever, and they weren't on TikTok.
Right. So
it was a good opportunity, and I got into it, I think, at the right time to go viral. So I saw him do that, and then I started making ninja content on TikTok. Got one video that got like 50,000 views, and that kind of motivated me a little bit. I was like, that's kind of cool.
Definitely.
Okay, I did. It was just us learning how to do a backflip off of a bar and trying to grab the bar. So we'd stand on it, do the flip, land on our bellies onto a mat, and then try to get our hands on the bar so that we could eventually do a trick in the gym and fly across the room and land on something. And so it was just the process. We were showing the process, and that got 50,000 views. I thought, okay, that was easy. Like I didn't have to do anything crazy. I just showed them what I was doing in the gym. So I was doing that for a little while on TikTok, and that was definitely the most successful app compared to YouTube. YouTube didn't have shorts, so if I did YouTube, it always had to be a 6-7 minute video. Right. Instagram I wasn't a huge fan of because a lot of people I knew were on Instagram, and they would see that, and I was like, I don't know how comfortable I am. I feel like they're just gonna think I'm being silly, and Eythan's gonna try and be a content creator, which I think everybody goes through when they first start. Yep. But I was at the gym one day. I was just kind of warming up. I wasn't doing a video or anything. I was just doing my own thing on a Friday, and it was a holiday at the time, so nobody else was in the gym, and I just wanted to get a workout in. So I was warming up on this machine, and my phone lights up, and I look at it, and it's a memory from when Jasmine and I not first met, but first started falling in love and spending time together at this camp that we were at.
Yeah.
And the photo is a big group of people. And on the left, there's me and Jasmine, and we're the only ones with arms around each other. Everybody else is just standing there and doing whatever. I thought everybody was going to do that because in most situations, that's what you do. You get into a line and you put your arm around the person that's next to you. Nobody did that except for me and Jasmine, there's a bit of a funny story with my mom on that one. But I saw that photo and I thought, oh, you know what? Like, it's been, at that time, it had been, I got to get my timeline, 4 years since, it was like a 4-year anniversary since we started falling in love. I thought, okay, like I'll make a little tribute about that. And I had posted a little bit about it on TikTok before, like little things, but nothing too crazy. So I made a video just out on the spot in the gym. I had her ring on a necklace around my neck, and then I just kind of showed the camera, and then it went to a bunch of images of her, and then at the end it showed me at her grave putting a flower on the casket. And that video, I think I posted it at 1 o'clock on a Friday, and by 3 o'clock, it was at like 40,000 views.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's almost past like any other video I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. That's really cool. I didn't think it was going to keep going. Like I thought, like TikTok at the time, it'd go up and then it'd just stop. So then by the time I got home, it was like 5 o'clock. It was at 80,000 views, sorry. And I see my dad sitting in the living room. He's the only one home. Everybody else was gone. And I said, Dad, I posted this video about Jasmine, and it's got 80,000 views, and like people are commenting on it and like saying nice things. And he's like, wow, that's really cool. Like, that's amazing. So I just kind of kept watching it, and through the whole night, like, it just kept going up, and I was just responding to comments that were coming in like crazy.
Wow.
And it was exhausting at the time, but it was exciting. So I didn't get any sleep for like a month after that because everything just snowballed really quickly. I was going out to my friend's camp when that video was going viral, and he was saying like, that's going to get 1 million views. Like, no, don't say anything. Like, don't jinx it. Like, don't say that. I don't know, maybe. And eventually it did by the end of the weekend. So I posted on the Friday. By the end of Sunday, it got up to 1.2 million views, I think. And so I planned out another video. Somebody asked a question like, what happened? And that's natural. I didn't really explain anything in the original viral video. Yep. They were curious. So then I made a video that kind of described that she passed away from cancer and who she was a little bit. And it was just a nice 60-second video. And I think TikTok had just opened up 60-second videos at the time. So I made that video, and it went from 0 views at, I posted it at night, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, to 1 million views within an hour.
Within an hour?
Within an hour. It just like went crazy. Like that was the most viral video, I think, and maybe still there was a few others that went just like that. But for somebody who only at the time or 3 days before had 150 followers,
right,
to getting a video to go from 0 to 1.2 or 1 million in an hour was crazy. So I didn't sleep at all. I was just on my phone and looking at all these messages and the great things that people were saying, or people saying that it was relatable and like, oh, this is amazing, and people duetting it and sharing it to their TikTok page. And it was really, really neat to see, because that was always the dream. I always wanted to be able to share her story, and that opportunity was finally there. It had only been 6 months since she passed away. So a lot of people, it's funny, at the start, even on my first video, they're like, oh, it's time to get over her, like move on already, which is like, all right. And they clearly didn't think about that comment. And then when I started dating Ashley, they're like, oh, you're moving too quick, slow down. Right. So I was like, you can't make a right decision. But I thought that was kind of funny right off the bat. Yeah. Hate right away. And they all, right away started accusing me of using her death for fame. And I was like, I didn't know that was going to happen. Like, I was just sharing it.
Yeah.
But I understand why people would get that. Because I see posts sometimes, it's like, all right, yeah, maybe, but I give them the benefit of the doubt. It's like, I was the same way. Like, I just wanted to share something, and it came off like I was trying to take advantage of somebody. But internet's
everyone
a crazy
has,
place.
An opinion.
Yeah, everybody's got something to say.
Okay, so let's go back, and could you give us a little bio on who Jasmine was in your own words? I can't think of anybody who deserved it less than her. Like, she did not deserve to go through what she went through. It was pretty terrible. So she was just a really amazing person and had such a great outlook on life, and she was always really positive. So I'll start back from my perspective. Mm-hmm. When I first met her, I didn't really know her. She was just a girl from Sudbury. There was a group from Sudbury at Camp Oshpakun was where we were going. So she had her friend group, I had mine. I was from the Sioux. So there was a little bit of a crossover, but we didn't really
talk to each other.
Yep.
I had like one interaction with her, and I just thought, oh, she's a really smart girl, like really bright. Like I probably wouldn't want to talk to her too much because at the time I had no confidence in my intelligence. So I was like, you know what? She can be with her friends. I'm going to go with the Sioux kids over here. So it was just different dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it.
Yep.
But it was just small interactions here and there. And then, so that was when we were 14. And then when we were 16, 17, there was a rumor that she had recently gotten a scan done and there was a mass in her abdomen. And so they didn't know at the time what it was. She wasn't officially diagnosed yet. Everybody kind of figured that it was cancer, because typically when that happens, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So we were at camp kind of waiting for a diagnosis, or everybody was kind of wondering what's going on. I remember seeing her one time just walking along this dock. There's an area that you can swim in, and I was swimming in the water, and this other guy was sitting with me, and as she walked by, I mentioned like, oh, that's Jasmine, like, and mentioned what's going on in her life, and his remark was, wow, she's beautiful, like, and her name's Jasmine, like he thought that was a really pretty name, and he's like, what, she has cancer? Like you wouldn't be able to tell. She was always like, she didn't walk around saying, oh, I'm sick, I have cancer. She didn't let people know. She didn't really care if people thought that. She wasn't trying to use it as a crutch or anything. So she would just walk up, you would have no idea. And it was like that for the first 4 years. Yeah. First 3 years of her diagnosis. Nobody could even tell. Like she just walked around normal, and she had this pretty large mass in her abdomen, and her lungs were getting worse, and she wouldn't tell anybody. So to me, that meant that she knew how to handle a really difficult situation, and she did it with purpose and confidence, and in an inspirational way. Because a lot of people, I think, would get diagnosed with terminal cancer and immediately think, oh, it's over. Like, or maybe they'll go, oh, I'm going to do all my last things, like go on a cruise, do all this. She didn't see it that way. She believed that God was just going to handle it for her, and that she wouldn't have to worry about it. And that's what she did. She didn't concern herself too much. She's like, yeah, like I'm going to be okay no matter what. Like it's all going to work out some way or another. So she had this hope that not very many people have. And that's really what we wanted to share, was the hope that she had in God and in Jesus Christ was something that really brought her through, something that not very many people would be able to handle, especially in that way. Yeah, I can't really summarize what she means to me. There's just so much there to go over, but I think that's a good example of who she was, just the amazing presence that she brought into any room that she went into.
Yeah. So you spent 3 years together as husband and wife, and I believe you moved around a lot in that time as Jasmine was going through her treatment in Arizona, I believe.
Before we were together, she did some treatment in Mexico, and she did some, like a little bit here after when we were together, but a big one was in Arizona. We got connected, or sorry, I should start that over. We didn't get connected. My mom connected Sherry, Jasmine's mom, to Gail Katzenbach and her family. So really quickly for the viewers, I guess, so that they understand who Gail is. Gail is another girl who was diagnosed with cancer the same age as Jasmine. She had a very different journey with her cancer, but they ended up in Arizona at this clinic that would do alternative treatments. And so we got connected to them, and we moved there, and everything worked out really well. Jason and Charlene were like, I don't even know what to say. Like they just gave us a place to stay in. Like they provided so much for Jasmine. Like Charlene just loved Gail and Jasmine like a mother, and Charlene was Gail's stepmom. So it was a really great example of love even there, just through Jason and Charlene and just how awesome they were. But yeah, we went to Arizona back and forth for, I want to say from July of, what would that have been? 2017. So she went to get some scans done in 2017, right before we got married. And then just after getting married, we went on our honeymoon and then pretty much went straight to Arizona. And we went there for, I think, 6 weeks, came back for 2, went again to Arizona for 4 weeks, came back for 2, back and forth a whole bunch. And eventually it just became too much. She didn't want to do that anymore. She just found that the stress of doing all the airports and living in somebody else's home, they were awesome, but it's still like, it's hard to be comfortable when you only have one room where you can have your privacy, So as amazing as they were, still challenging to cohabitate with another family with different styles of living and different dynamics. But she just found that it was too much. And around that time, I think Jasmine decided she wasn't going to do it anymore. And Gail was doing really poorly. Her health had declined, and she was put into traction. So she had this big metal rig attached to her head with screws in it to help lift her neck, because where her cancer was pretty much everywhere, but a major one was near and around her spine, and it was starting to sever her neck pretty much.
Wow.
So her health had been declining, and then she passed away shortly after, and we didn't go back to Arizona. Jasmine was like, well, it clearly didn't work for Gail. And although maybe Jasmine and Gail didn't perfectly follow the protocol that they were on, like they stayed on it for almost to a T. So we thought, okay, maybe we should reevaluate what we're doing and where we're getting treatment. Maybe we shouldn't be going to Arizona, and maybe we should be spending more time with family in here instead of away from everybody all the time. So that's the decision we came to. And then after that, the treatments was basically anything that they offer here. So she did a little bit of radiation on her, in her kidney area, the tumors that were in there, which seemed to help a little bit, not too much. It was more palliative, and they told us that right off the bat. This isn't going to cure anything. This is just to help ease your symptoms and not make you suffer as much. Right. So it went from alternative treatments in Arizona, coming back here, spending time with family, and kind of having the odd visit and getting connected to an oncologist that was in the Sioux.
Yeah. And you spent some time in Sudbury too, because that's where she's from.
Right. Yes, we did move to Sudbury. So during the time that she decided not to go to Arizona, we were living in Sudbury. Right then, we found an apartment in January of 2018, and February is when we were last in Arizona. So we lived in Sudbury for a bit. We moved around. So we moved from in like the downtown area to an outer area called Dowling. We had a little house there with a friend who provided us with a really great house for a cheap price, because he liked Jasmine and he wanted to support her, and he was being an awesome friend at the time and friend to the family. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, you guys can live in the house. He took care of things. He came and mowed the lawn, and it was like I didn't have to do any upkeep on the place. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
We found a little house, and then I got offered a job in 2018, at the end of 2018, to come and open up a ninja gym with Tyler Blanchet.
Wow.
And he basically told me, like, man, I can only open this ninja gym if you agree to come and run it. He's like, I don't have anybody right now lined up, and I want to get this going. And at the time, I was working at a different gym that wasn't really working out, and it was going downhill. It later closed a year and a half after, so I got out just in time. So I agreed, Tyler, I'll come and work for you. We'll run this ninja gym together. So me and Jasmine packed up and moved back here from Sudbury to spend more time with my family as well.
Yeah.
And so that I could be around my family. I think Jasmine, that was one of the reasons she really pushed for me to take that job, is she thought, like, listen, I could die, I could die soon, and I want you to be in the Sioux. I don't want you to be stuck here in Sudbury, so we might as well move to the Sioux, and then you can be around your family at the very least. So it was just another example of her thinking about others.
Yeah.
I took that job, and then I worked that for 4 years. About halfway through that, is when Jasmine passed away in May of 2020. And then that's when everything started to really change. It's interesting how grief does that. And I've heard that there's a really strong connection between emotion and creativity, or also people who are sensitive and creativity. And I wouldn't say that I'm not sensitive. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a super sensitive person, though there's probably some people that would disagree. But it's interesting how, a really big life event can change so much. And as terrible as it was, I have a job that I really enjoy and that I have a lot of fun doing. I can get to do something like this, which I've never been on a podcast before. So it's an interesting experience for me. I'm going off track a little bit, but I do that. There's just so much information to share.
I know.
So it's just, how do I summarize all of it?
No, you're doing great. I guess I want to go back a little bit and touch on the pandemic and how that affected you both, and then as well as like the moment of her passing, not being able to rejoice in your community. Not rejoice, that's the wrong word, but like connect to your community.
Right. Do you want to ask that again? I'm just going over the points.
So during the pandemic, how were you both affected mainly? Okay. And then in the moment of her passing as well during the pandemic.
Right. As terrible as the pandemic was, it was pretty well timed.
Yeah.
Her parents are both teachers, and at the time, right as the pandemic pretty much started,
Jasmine had moved back to Sudbury because she weighed about 60 pounds. She was just bone and skin, had almost no muscle. She couldn't even pick up a glass of water to give herself a drink. She was just that weak. So she decided that she wanted to go live with her parents. I mean, that's the best person. If you're sick, your mother, your father are the best people to take care of you. That's who you're going to be the most comfortable with, because that's the person who raised you and took care of you growing up. Yeah. If you have a good relationship with them anyway. So that's what she wanted to do. So she moved to Sudbury again, and they were out at camp, and this pandemic started happening. And to me, it was a bit exciting. I was like, wow, this is so interesting. I've been on this planet for, at the time, 22 years, and this has never happened. Like, there's always a scare, but it never comes here. Or if it did, there's the H1N1, the swine flu that came through, but it didn't lock things down. So we're like, this is so interesting. So I was out back and forth to that camp, and we'd wake up and we'd watch the announcement, like, okay, this is locking down today. Like, okay, cool. And then when work was locked down, for Sherry and Aaron, her parents, they just got to stay home. Like, they were they didn't have to worry about losing their job to watch their daughter. Like, it just lined itself up perfectly. They were able to take care of her. So from a lot of our perspective, or how we all felt about it was really well timed. So that we were able to just spend more time with Jasmine, especially near the end of her life, because that's when she passed away. It was 3 months because the pandemic started, I think, in March till May. So that time, 2 months, I guess. So going through that, like the pandemic, sure, it sucked. There were some things that were terrible, a lot of things that were terrible for a lot of people. For us, it made it really easy to just stay out at camp, take care of Jasmine. Even when she passed away, just after, I had time to grieve. Like, my work wasn't super busy. I didn't have to jump right back into a job and try to put on a happy face for 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week. We were only running, I don't know, like in the morning. So I would get a nice little break. It would get my mind off things. It wouldn't overwhelm me. And everything just seemed to kind of perfectly work out. And so I often reflect on the pandemic and think it really sucked that I couldn't work, but I did have a lot of fun because I could just go out and do my own thing creatively. I could learn how to use a camera when I couldn't work. So I think that's what expedited the process of becoming a bit of a content creator. Was amazing. I was bored, had nothing to do, and we were making videos, ninja videos. We were flipping around all the time. And it was a good time. So it actually really helped me in the grieving process to not have to work and to express myself creatively.
I would like to talk more about like how the content progressed through your, I guess, grief, and how you translated and started telling her story. You kind of touched on it, but like, how did that impact you, and like what community came out of it, if that makes sense?
So sharing it online. I think for a lot of men, like, I didn't know who to really talk to. I knew that I could talk to my parents about it, but I figured if I talk to a bunch of people, it's going to show that I'm weak. Or in a weak moment in my life, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is, I think, seen by the general population as a bad thing. So it'd be nice to see that switch around, so that there would be a way for men to talk about these things a bit more, because they don't talk about it with each other too often. So social media was the perfect outlet for me, because I could just talk to a camera, and there wasn't a person there. I was like, I could talk about anything right now, and I don't have to show anybody. I don't have to show them if I start crying or not. Like, I did show a little bit of that on TikTok, because I didn't want to give a false image of myself for people to look at and think, oh, he's like so strong, he didn't cry once. Like, no, I was crying. So it was really, really helpful, because people would ask questions and they would relate to it. They would comment and help me process. They would ask questions that I didn't really think about, and that would help me address any of those issues. So I can't really think of any examples off my head, but I think it was 2020 in the fall was when I was really answering a lot of those questions. It happened during that time, and somebody would ask, what are you going to tell your future kids if you get married? Are you going to remarry? And then I was like, oh yeah, I gotta think about that. So any questions that they asked, I would try to answer them, whether it was through a comment or an actual video. And so they would help me process, and I would have to sit there and really go through the question, because I knew that if I'm going to post this online, it has to help somebody else go through this. So it has to be really clear. So I couldn't just sit there and wipe things off and just, no, I don't want to think about that. I actually process them by making those videos. So it was definitely helpful. And it's
I think it's a bit unfortunate that that's the only route that I felt I could take, but I'm very thankful that it was there.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten better at doing that now and being more vulnerable with people. I've tried to do that more with my friends and like asking them about what's going on in their life and trying to open up those doors. It's still it's challenging.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to just go online and start sharing everything about their life. I'd say find somebody that you trust and share that information with them. But online is something, or social media is one way to maybe help other people go through that process that you're going through.
I know that Jasmine had a blog that she kind of went through this process as well. Like while she was going through it, she expressed what was going on in a similar format. She was telling her story and I assume built a community through that. So do you think like you were inspired by that in some way and then continued her story? And do you think there was like a connection between that?
I think, I mean, before Jasmine passed away, to the difference in who I am now to who I was then it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I didn't even really read any of her blogs at the time. It was just something that she would do. I would go to work, she'd be at home, she didn't work, so she would write a blog or keep herself busy somehow. So she would write these things, and I think I read one because she wanted me to, but it was definitely a selfish thing that I did. I didn't want to read them because it was a sensitive topic at the time. Like she was talking about death, and I was like, this is my wife talking about dying. Yeah. But she had I read a little bit of them afterwards, and she just had such a great outlook on life in that she would say that I don't care. Like as long as one person gets to hear my story and it changes their life, like that's okay.
Yeah.
Like that's, to her, that was worth it. And so she didn't want people to look at her illness and think and associate that that's all she was. Because she was definitely more than that. And I think anybody with not mental illness, any terminal illness, I think it's easy for them to think, oh, this is who I am now. Yeah. And so I think her blog showed, no, my identity is not in my illness. Yeah. It's in all these other things. So it's definitely inspiring, although I didn't read it, which I definitely wish. If I look back now, I should have read that. That was my wife's blog.
Right.
But I think maybe part of me didn't take it seriously, and I thought, she's just writing it for herself. That's fine. Like, she's just an outlet of her own. I don't really know why. I'm not very good at reading anyway. Like, I don't read books. I don't read a lot of things. That's just not the way that I learn. So there's that obstacle as well. I'm a slow reader. I read about as fast as I can talk. I can talk probably faster than I can read.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm in the same boat. Yes, but that's super interesting. I feel like she probably came to you in those moments and told you what she was writing about in certain aspects.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Like, if she was going to mention me, she would say, I wrote this about us, and she would definitely be sensitive of my privacy and ask for my permission on things, which she didn't really need to do. It's like, you can express however you want to, as long as you're not making me a bad person on there.
Definitely.
Unless it's something that's real. Like if I did something that was selfish, like that's okay. But yeah, she'd be sensitive and ask me to look over things if I had to. Yeah.
I guess storytelling is also in your family, through your mother, who wrote a book on Jasmine's story through her lens. Is this something you want to like briefly talk about? Mm-hmm. I guess, could you give like a little synopsis of like what the book?
So Suitcases from Heaven was just my mother's perspective of what Jasmine went through. So it started off, she wasn't even going to write this book. She was going to write some sort of fiction book about a story in the Bible and how it could have branched off that they didn't cover. There was the woman at the well, I think, that my mom wanted to write about. And so she originally was talking with an editor, and this was the story, but then the editor heard about Jasmine. And was like, you need to write that story. Like, I know you want to write this fictional story. You need to write that one. So my mom was already kind of recording things just in simple sentences, like Jasmine went to the hospital this date, or she coughed up blood this date. And so she just kind of wrote them down, and that evolved into a book that she now has. So she wasn't even planning to write it at all, and then everything changed. So it's all just from my mother's perspective of Jasmine's interactions with the people around her, with how Jasmine handled a terminal illness, and how Jasmine was in marriage or as a daughter-in-law. It's a very unique perspective that I don't think a lot of people would ever write about. Usually it'd be the the husband or a friend, like your best friend, you know. So from a mother-in-law's perspective, I think it's a really inspiring story for specifically mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws and how to love each other, because those relationships can be really tricky to navigate when there's a man, so somebody's son and somebody's husband right in the middle of it. Those can definitely have conflicts in them. But my mom, I think she loved Jasmine just like as if she was her own daughter.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell that from reading that book. But there's a lot more to it. It's not just that. There's a lot of inspiring and moments of hope in that book that I think a lot of people could benefit from, not just a mother-in-law or a daughter-in-law. I would argue that the book is for everybody because it's just so inspiring.
Yeah. Did you read the book yourself?
I did not read the book myself. What happened was it started off, when you write a book, you have a lot and then they condense it. So she had the 500-page version when I first read. So I read through that one. That was not even a year after I think Jasmine had passed away. She had that first kind of edition, I'm going to call it. So I read that one, but through the process and in my life, I was beginning to date Ashley when my mom was finishing this book.
Yep.
And it was a really difficult situation for me to be in because I had finally opened myself up to loving another person. But this book and Jasmine's content would create this weird thing in my mind where it's like, wait, like I love Ashley, but I also love Jasmine. And it was a bit of a confusing thing for me to process. So I avoided reading the book at the start because I thought, I don't think I can handle that, revisiting it and reliving it while I'm in love with Ashley here. Like now it's just emotionally, it's bringing me back to this part of my life, but I'm here right now. So I didn't read it. Like I said, I'm terrible at reading anyway. So for me to sit down, I can't pay attention. Like I don't know what it is. I have these fidget toys that I actually started using to help with focusing at my work and while I'm reading. And they help a little bit, but it's just challenging to sit down and read a book. My mom wrote another book, and in there, I think she talks about me a little bit and how I just never sat still. And they wanted to diagnose me with ADHD when I was a kid, and maybe that's something, maybe that's real. Who knows? But I think every boy, most boys at a young age have a lot of energy, and it's difficult to sit down and stay still. I still have that. I need to be moving and doing, like this whole time. I'm not even looking at you as we're talking. I'm looking at this table. I'm like picking at stuff because I can't just focus on the conversation. I have to do a whole bunch of different things at the same time for it to be able to focus on saying the conversation. So yeah, I never read it. I'm going to. I don't know exactly when. I still want to do a few other things of my own projects before I sit down and spend so much time. My sisters read it in like the first day.
Wow.
They're fast readers. I can't, there's no way I would be able to sit down and read a book in a single day. The book would have to be like 3 pages for me to be able to do that. So I will eventually sit down and read it. I had to verify the information. That's about it. My mom would say, go look at this one. So there were a couple where there's a part in the book where we're sitting in the car and she thought that I was driving, but at the time I was like, no, you were definitely, like, I didn't want to drive. At that point in my life, I wanted to just sit there and look at my phone. And so there was things that I had to check over, but that was about it. I skimmed through it once just to make sure that information was accurate.
Right. Yeah. So do you see yourself sharing your story or Jasmine's in another way that you haven't already? So like in a different form or medium, like other than short form videos? Eventually I would like to do some sort of documentary or docuseries. Right now it's going to be a documentary. So I was planning to make an update about this. So anybody that's watching this and knows what my original plan was, this is going to be a lot different. Originally, I wanted to do docuseries about everybody in Jasmine's life, so that each person would have their own episode and their own perspective. So I'd do maybe her mom and her dad together, or maybe on their own, and then her sister, her best friends, my family, my siblings, the nurses that maybe took care of her. But then I thought, this is one person's story. I might as well just do one documentary, and then later maybe I could do the docuseries if something interesting comes up and those individuals want to do more. Because it's been almost 4 years now. In May, it'll be 4 years. And some of the people that I would like to have in this story, they're not ready for that. And they're still processing, and grief is different for everybody.
especially depending on the relationship that it was. So if you're a family member versus a friend versus the nurse, like obviously that's all completely different.
Yeah.
So I have to be sensitive and respectful of their timeline. So I don't know when that documentary would come out, but ideally in the next 10 years, I would say I'd like to get that done. If not, then whatever. But there's just so much that I want to go into it. I want to make sure that it looks really good. And so now I'm hoping to have like maybe some animation to illustrate the stories. I don't know how I'll make that work, but I don't want to just have the interviews and people talking about it. I think it'd be much more interesting and easy to comprehend and give a good example of how difficult it was by showing and illustrating these stories in a more creative and beautiful way than just a person sitting there.
Yeah.
But we'll see. It evolves all the time. I'm constantly thinking about it, and it's interrupted a lot of my content creation because all I can think about is that most of it. It's hard to switch.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I got this big project, but in between I have to do these ones. Makes it difficult.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Eventually, a long form, all encompassing kind of documentary I think would be ideal.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So I guess let's move on to the new phase in your life with you fell in love again, obviously, and you met Ashley. So would you like to briefly introduce her into your story, how she came about and who she is?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I never went into online dating or anything. A lot of people do nowadays. I thought, you know what, if it's going to happen, it'll happen. Like, I don't need to get remarried. I knew Jasmine wanted me to, because she knew that that's something that I would not necessarily need in my life, but I benefit from, and I'm not the person that can be alone. So I knew that Jasmine wanted me to remarry, but I didn't go out of my way to make that happen. Like, I wasn't looking online. I had a lot of messages from people across the world, like asking, like, hey, we could go for dinner sometime. Like this one lady, I think was from the Toronto area, and she said, hey, I've seen some of your videos, and she had a nice written message, but she didn't realize how far away I was. She thought, oh, you're in Ontario. And I think people from Toronto don't realize how big Ontario is.
They don't.
So when she said, oh, we could go to dinner sometimes, like, sure. I forgot exactly what I said, but I said, yeah, I'd love to go for dinner. I live about 8 hours away, so whenever you're ready to drive here, I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I thought I'd send the message just to be funny.
Definitely.
Didn't respond.
Shoot your shot anyway.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. But there was a bunch of people that sent messages. So I only responded to, I think, 2 of them, because if they had something that was written really nice, oh, you know what, they seem like a nice person, so I'll respond. But what happened with Ashley was through TikTok, coincidentally. She had been sent one of my videos in, what would have this been, August of 2021? Yeah. And her friend had been following me for a while and had been seeing the story and knew that I lived in the Sault and knew that I viewed life very similar to Ashley. So she knew that I was a Christian, that I believed in God and Jesus Christ, and Ashley did as well. And Ashley was doing worship at a church here, the Summit. And her friend was like, hey, look at this guy. I know you feel like in the Sault there's nobody that agrees with you on these kinds of things, but look, there's this guy. And at the time, all of my content was really sad. It was just talking about Jasmine. So it looked like that's all I did. But that's just who I was online. I think people watching this podcast might watch this, and if they've only seen my content, they'll be like, wow, this is way different than how he is online. That's because the story that I was talking about was really sad. So that's how my content looked. So from Ashley's perspective, she was like, okay, I don't really want to get into it with a guy who's still so deeply and emotionally involved with his late wife. I'm just gonna maybe whatever, I'll just wait. And then she saw a video of me going around taking photos. There was the ghost trend where you have the sunglasses on and a white sheet. Yeah. I love it. I wanted to do it this year, but I didn't get to. And she thought, okay, he's not just sitting at home making videos about Jasmine. He actually is going out with his friends. He's got a social life. So she reached out, I think, on that video. Might have been a different one. And she said, hey, you seem cool. You should come out to my young adults group sometime. And that's just a group of Christians go to somebody's house and they can do a Bible study or a prayer together. And so she invited me out to that. And I was like, oh, sure. I don't mind. It's the pandemic. I'm not doing much. And I'd love to. In the middle of the week, it's nice to go. And it's kind of refreshing to bring yourself back to thinking about God and spending time with him. So in the middle of the week, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And I knew that Devin, my brother, had already been to that group. So I asked him about it. I said, okay, so who's Ashley? She invited me, and he was like, oh, that's this girl. And so he kind of gave me some info. I was like, okay, cool. So we go there. I asked Devin to come with me because I didn't want to go alone to this person's house with all these people.
Yeah.
But I did end up knowing a couple people there. When I walked in, I was going to sit beside her because like she invited me. Like
Right.
I don't really know anybody else to sit beside other than my brother. So I go in, I walk in, and all the seats around her were taken. I had to sit on the opposite side of the room. So I sat kind of looking at her, facing each other a little bit, and we didn't really get to interact very much that night. We just kind of had a couple of jokes here and there. I tried to make her laugh as much as I could and take that opportunity in the group, so that she would again understand like I'm not just really, really sad all the time. Like I can have fun, and like I can talk to people. I can come out here, and I'm not just going to drag everything down. So I think that's what happened is, she was impressed by me being able to socially be comfortable in a group setting where I didn't know a lot of people and be able to talk to all of them. So then afterwards, when I left, I think I waited a day or two, and I started talking to her like, oh, thanks for inviting me out. And I tried to manipulate the conversation to eventually ask her to go to Thompson Farms with me, which is a nice farm in near Sault Ste. Marie. It's a strawberry farm with some nice things to look at, especially in the fall, which it was at the time. I think it was October. So I invited her, and she agreed to go with me. So we went to Fort Creek to start. We went on my longboards. At the time, I was really into longboards. I still am. I have electric longboards now. But back then, I was just showing Ashley how to use them. So we were at Fort Creek for a bit. Then we went over to Thompson Farms, walked around. We did the corn maze. I learned that Ashley has a very poor sense of direction. And then we went out to Grow Cap and basically watched the sunset. And we just chatted for a bit and talked a little bit about life. I didn't bring up Jasmine at all. We just kind of talked about what we were doing, what we believed in. And then when I dropped her off, I had picked her up, but when I dropped her off, I told her, I was like, listen, I don't want to just be a friend. Like, I'm interested in dating you. Like, I'm not here to just hang out. So I'd love to go out again sometime if we can. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm on the same page. Like, that's why she invited me. She wasn't just, it was a bit in between. Like, she invited me as a friend to go out, but she thought, whatever. Like, maybe it'll turn into stuff. She wasn't like, oh, please date me. So it ended up working out that we were both on the same page. And then it went into, dating and me making a video about it and telling everybody on social media and them telling me, oh, you got to slow down after they just told me a year before that I had to move on. So it was funny.
And they don't get to see all the in-between like intricacies of life and like it's very hard.
It's really interesting how people on the internet think they know so much about a situation that they've only seen through their phone. And so they only know what I show them. And so you didn't see like about 99% of my day. You saw literally a 60-second video that I sat down and made. You didn't see anything else, and you think you know all this to accuse me of these things. So it's interesting. People on the internet, it's interesting.
And it's hard, I feel like, from a content creator's perspective, because you're living your life, and it's hard to like understand what they saw and what they perceive, I think. It would be hard because,
like I said, I've seen other people share similar information, and right off the bat, it's like, and I was like, well, you know what? I haven't seen most of their life either. So it's hard to put myself even in their perspective to understand that, there isn't a lot that they've seen, or I don't know which video they saw, which pieces of, and what order they saw it in. And maybe they saw one that pushed them in the wrong direction. Then after that, every video was just not a good one. If they hadn't seen that one first, then maybe they would have had a different mindset towards it.
Right. So I love that your content has kind of shifted, obviously, as your life has shifted, and you've documented more of like the mundane things in your life as well as the special moments, like your first date that you had with Ashley after the pandemic in the real world, and you proposed. So that's beautiful to like capture your life and highlight those special moments. So I want to just know more from your perspective how you think that your content has evolved stylistically as well as like contextually.
The context of my videos now aren't focused on Jasmine anymore. I made a video a while ago, and I think it's pinned on my TikTok page, so anybody can go and find it. It's probably the first video on the feed that just says changes, and I kind of tell them like, this is just a different spot in my life now. I'm with Ashley. Like I don't think it's necessarily fair to her for me to constantly talk about Jasmine on social media. So like, well, now I'm gonna try and switch. I might talk about Jasmine here or there. I might talk about my own experience as a widower a bit more often. But I think my stage of life is to now move away from sharing about Jasmine, because I did a lot, and there wasn't much more that I wanted to share in that way. I wanted to save a lot of it for the documentary. So I told people that, and I think it was received pretty well. A lot of people understood, even people in Jasmine's life understood. They're like, yeah, we think this is the right way for that to go. Like we're not upset that you're making this decision. So my content now, I'm still trying to figure it out. Actually, it's been a year and a half since I made that announcement, and content is really interesting because it on TikTok grew around grief and loss and cancer and Jasmine. And to switch content, it's not what any social media platform wants you to do. You have to stay in your lane. So right now I'm just kind of relaxing. I'm experimenting. I'm more just learning, especially on the editing side. Through my job, I work with somebody who's extremely talented on post-production, so I've gotten to learn a lot through them. And so I'm more just experimenting. I'm more just having fun creating random things. So I started that local Algoma account to just kind of feature Sault Ste. Marie and the different places here. So I'm still trying to decide how that'll go, and that'll be a slow build up to hopefully eventually it can evolve into something that is a good resource for the city and something that I can do maybe full time or not, who knows. But I think it'd be a lot of fun because I like the Soo. I like a lot of things in the Soo, and too many people I think talk about how there's nothing to do and they don't know what to do, or they don't know what's going on. So I'd like to see that change. And that's where, some of my content on a separate page will be going there. As far as TikTok goes, it's just random. It's nothing in particular. It's just whatever I feel like sharing at the time. And then sometime I'd like to get more into YouTube. I like the long form videos. I also like horizontal videos. I don't like vertical. Like our eyes are side by side, and so we see horizontally. We don't see vertically. So I hate the vertical TikTok and reels and shorts, but I'll adjust. Hopefully it switches. Eventually we'll have the folding phones, right? And everything will be horizontal. Yes. I hope Apple does that soon. But I do really like making long videos, and hopefully I can make some that I think are inspiring and not necessarily advice related, but based around life and helping people with their perspective, because I think a lot of people have had such different upbringings than I've had, and they have a different perspective on life, and some of them are really bitter, or some of them are just really selfish and kind of in their own minds about things. And I think that it would just be really helpful to make content to bring people to a different spot in their life. Definitely. I'm going to ask you some advice questions after. Okay. Because you are I get the sense that you were a very good person to ask for advice. Well, thank you very much. That's a huge compliment. You're eager to learn, and then you're eager to help and support and serve. Yeah, thank you. So I guess touching a little bit more on local Algoma, I want to know how our listeners can support you in this journey, and what your hopes are, I guess, a little deeper. As far as how people can support, there's a few ways, I guess, and I'm slowly building this up. So having other content creators in the Soo, there's a couple of them. I mean, a lot of people don't know that there's a few people with very successful online careers in the Soo. It's not based around the Soo, so you don't know that it's in Sault Ste. Marie. It might be about vehicles, might be about wildlife and being out in nature. But it'd be cool to have them join in somehow. I know monetarily that's the challenge. I don't know how to get them on there because I can't pay anybody really. I'm not making money off of it. Once I do start making money off of it, if that happens, then I'll make it so that I can feature more people and talented individuals and collaborate on those projects. But as far as the viewers go, I think helping me feature places, like if there's a business, like I don't know how many businesses are just here on Queen Street, and I don't know what half of them are. I've never been in there. I don't know what it looks like some really high-end clothing on some of them. I have no idea. So I'd love to go and explore, and if there's a business that's watching this or listening to this and you want to get featured, just let me know, because I could just come in and feature it and make a nice video about it, like I'm going to do for the Soo Museum. Still working on that one. But I just need more places to go and feature. So I need to do my own research and basically just walk along Queen Street and go into buildings and say, oh, what is this place?
Definitely.
To get more, to make stuff about, to make content about.
Yeah.
I think you had one more question on there. Was that was just the support?
Yeah, like what do you love about the Sioux, I guess?
Oh yeah, the Sioux, the nature. We have so much that we can just go and look at.
Yeah.
When I was in Arizona, they had mountains there that looked really cool because for the most part, it's a deserty area. There's a lot of cacti and like it looks really interesting to me because I grew up here. It's just way different.
Right.
So it was the novelty of being there. But I'd look in the distance, like, wow, that mountain just looks so cool. Like it's all flat and then this huge, beautiful mountain. Then I'd come here and be like, oh, we have mountains too. They're just covered in trees. But to me, that's just not, that just doesn't look cool anymore because I grew up here.
Yeah.
So I really do enjoy now. That helped me change my perspective after being in Arizona to now coming here and appreciating how this all looks, especially getting into photography and videography. Before, I didn't really care to go out. I didn't want to, like, I'd go to Hiawatha. That was about it. But we have so many places to explore here, just in nature alone, that are really cool. And so I would like to, when the weather permits it, feature some of those places, not just in the Sioux, but around. That's why it's local Algoma. It's not just Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
So like Robertson Cliffs is a big one that everybody knows about, or the Haviland Lookout, or Grow Cap.
Yeah.
I'd made a wintry one about Grow Cap a long time ago that I'd like to redo, just different skills that I have now. But I do really enjoy the lack of busyness that the Sioux has. It's a slower life. When I was in Arizona, I was in Scottsdale, and it's a really interesting place. Because they try to make it the most livable city. That's their slogan pretty much.
Okay.
And so there's no signs anywhere. You don't know where you are until you're right beside it. Like they don't have a big M for McDonald's on the street. And like it's just the building, and the buildings all have to have certain shapes and certain colors. And I was like, oh, there's not a lot of creativity in the structure of the place. However, the nature is really nice.
Interesting.
But here, like we can go to so many different places, and like I do wish we had some better architecture. Like this building's really cool.
Yes.
So when I came in here, like this is so nice. Like it's so different. Like even some of the walls and the ceilings and like everything, there's a little bit of a design to them. And you go into most buildings nowadays, just a wall and a ceiling, and it's all white and it's flat and it's kind of boring.
Definitely.
But I do like, the things that we can look at here, because I think it's a really beautiful city, and it's not as busy and fast paced like Scottsdale, because it's fairly busy there. Phoenix is right nearby. Or Toronto, it's just so busy there, and everybody's going nuts, going to wherever they're going. And here, it's just nice to walk on the boardwalk and not have anywhere to go, and nobody else seems to be in any rush either.
Yeah. Yes, I'm really looking forward to see your progress through this, because I think your message is impactful for the Sioux, for people to get out there and engage more into the community. Because really, all it takes is, like you said, just walking downtown and walking into those stores and engaging with it. So, like I said, I want to touch on some advice pieces, just a few notes that I thought related and you would have a good opinion on. So they're all kind of random, but okay, we'll just start. What's your biggest takeaway from supporting a loved one battling health issues? Was there a mindset or action that helped make the journey just a little, like 1% better?
Well, for us specifically, just the hope that we had in Jesus made a big difference. If we didn't have that, I don't know how we would have handled the situation, because I think a lot of people, their perception of death is nothing. Like nothing happens. And that's pretty scary to think about. So I think when those people get diagnosed, like this is it, this is all I have left, and that's it. I just have a few months and there's nothing afterwards. So it doesn't matter at this point. So the hope that we had in Jesus Christ was huge. And definitely the rock that we were able to lean on. So as far as anybody else that's in that situation, I would just encourage them to, explore the Bible and explore all the evidence that's behind it, and just kind of find the truth. Just seek out the truth, and not just listen to what the world is kind of saying and encouraging everybody to do. I think that's just a different perspective to have, and it was extremely helpful. Then aside from that, it's kind of a situation of you got to do what you got to do. You can't
be sitting around waiting for something terrible to happen. You just continue living your life. Try not to be selfish about it. I think a lot of people, just become really selfish, even if they're not the ones diagnosed. And I did that. I did a little bit of that when Jasmine was dying. Like there were moments where I had to take care of myself a little bit, which I wish I didn't have to do. Felt like I did at the time. So like an example would be I'd play some video games here and there out in the living room. I thought Jasmine was sleeping, but I could have been in there talking with her, like, you know. So I think a lot of people would be inclined to do that. And it's not necessarily that I would, I don't sit there and regret it a ton, but I do think about it and wish, that's something that I wish I could have done differently. Is just spent more time talking to her and enjoying that time rather than kind of avoiding it because there's a lot to handle.
Yeah.
But again, you have to do what you have to do. So I think some people need that. You need to have your outlet. And so don't feel guilty if you've found one. Try not to let that ruin you as well. I think guilt is a big problem for a lot of people. But if you need a break, it's okay to take a break, but try not to be too selfish about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good advice. What is one piece of advice that you would give to someone wanting to get involved in videography and content creation that maybe they're a little too shy or don't know where to start? What would you tell them?
Well, I mean, everybody's got a camera in their pocket. Like I have my phone. I think it's hard for a lot of people to start. I would start with content creation because it's almost embarrassing still. There's not a lot of people doing it, especially in Sault Ste. Marie, for example. Like you don't see people walking around with cameras and talking to it. I think a lot of people, if they see me doing it, they're like, what's going on? It's getting a little bit better now. I think enough people know that there are creators in the Soo, and maybe they see my stuff on the Sault Ste. Marie Instagram account because sometimes it gets posted there to their stories or to their page, or maybe they've just been following me. So it's getting better. But when I first started, people would look at me like I was from a different planet. And they'd be like, what is this guy doing? I had these lights out at Finn Hill. It was dark, and I brought my lights with me. And so people driving by would just be like, all right. And now that might be a bit of confirmation bias. I might be standing there thinking everybody's looking at me all funny and like I'm just looking for every opportunity to, that's what it is. Yep, that's what it is. But I do think in a small city where that's not a normal thing, people do kind of give you some funny looks and they're not comfortable with the camera. Although if you're in public, you're running the risk of being seen in public. You're running the risk of having your photo or video taken in public. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that. So just don't be afraid. If you're getting into content creation, act like you have 2 million followers and just start making that content. Because a lot of people get in front of a camera and they're just not confident. And for me, that's the hardest thing to watch is if I'm on social media and if that person, it seems like they're just starting and they're not confident. It's hard. It's really hard to sit there and watch because typically they're not being themselves. But online, you don't necessarily have to be yourself. I think we have different personalities depending on where we are. Like when I'm in a podcast room, it might be different than when I'm with my wife, than when I'm with my family, or when I'm just alone in front of a camera. So don't think too much about being yourself. Just try to be confident when you're doing it. Yeah. And then for videography, that one's a fun one to experiment with. You don't really have to worry about people's opinions as much because you can just go out to somewhere nice and just record a video and just stick it on a tripod, stick your camera or your phone on a tripod and just try to line up some nice compositions and see what you think about it. And learning it's really fun too. There's a big technical side to videography. It's more than just handling the camera. You got to be able to edit it. And I think it's a lot of fun to learn. And you need to have a mindset of being a fool at the start of it. You have to be bad at it, and you have to be bad at everything you start. If you want to be good at it, you're going to start at the bottom. And I think everybody just wants to jump right to the top, and they just want to be able to do it already. And I hear that all the time with content creation. They're like, oh, I want to learn that. Or no, I want to be able to do that. Sorry, they don't say I want to learn that. I want to be able to do that. It's like, but you don't want to learn it. So that's what you have to do. You have to be willing to be terrible and just expect to be terrible. Be okay with being terrible at something. Yeah. I do that often when I look back at my old content. Back then, I thought I was good at it. And then I'd watch it 2 years ago. I was like, oh, I can't watch a lot of my content now, especially even the stuff that I shared about Jasmine. It's cringy to me. Just the way that who I was in front of a camera at that time is different than who I am now in front of a camera. Yeah. And I was trying to figure out how do I act in front of a camera now. But
but now I can see it, and it's just it's tough to watch. But every creator does that, and that's an issue for anybody who's ever made videos about themselves or with themselves in it. Yeah.
So how did you learn? What was your process of learning?
So at the start, it kind of, because of social media took off, I thought, I want to increase my quality. So I bought an M50, a Canon M50, a little camera, and it's great. It works really well for content creation. And when I bought it, there was a little course that I was able to take. They have a package in there, and it says, okay, watch our video. And this really popular YouTuber is the guy that they had, and he's really interesting to watch. He's hilarious, so it makes it really easy. But a lot of people, I think, they look at that course like, whoa, that's too much, but it's really quick. You could do it all in a day. And you can, if you just focus on the camera and do what it says, you'll learn how to use a camera. And there's really only 4 settings that people have to actively be paying attention to. The other ones they can just leave. So if you're getting a camera, don't shoot in anything other than manual mode at the start, and you'll learn how to use a camera. That's what I did.
Definitely.
I just switched it right to the M. I think that's what I was told to do, and I never looked back. And then occasionally, depending on what I'm doing, I'll switch to AV mode for a time lapse or something. But most of the time, it's always just, no, you just got to learn how to do it, and that's it. Just learn it, get it done, and you'll be able to make nice videos.
Yeah, and it's an ever evolving process.
Yeah, you're always learning. That's the fun thing I find about video. Photography, there's a lot to learn, but there's even more to learn when it comes to videography, because now you're also doing sound. When it comes to photos, you can snap 40 photos and just choose one. Whereas video, you get one opportunity to get that video. If somebody walks in front, that video's done. So it's it's really precise. You have to be really careful. I was shooting a wedding over at the loft. There was a reception, or I guess the party. And the bride and groom were walking in. I was getting this wonderful shot. I was like, okay, this is perfect. And then somebody walked right in front. And I thought, if I was taking photos, I would have gotten 4, 5, 6, right at the, it would have worked. But now I can't use this video because I can't show 24 frames, which is only a second long. And most of the time when I'm making videos, it's I can't show that.
Yeah.
So it is a lot to learn in videography, I find, compared to photography.
Right.
But with photography, you can make some really cool images really easily that can be really fun. Whereas on the video side, if you want to learn 3D editing, that's a lot. I would like to get into it, but that's why they have, when you watch a movie and they show the credits.
Yes, that's why there's
so many of them. There's just so
yeah.
much that goes into it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's just so different. There's so much to learn, and I don't think anybody would ever be able to learn all of it and be able to make a movie like that on their own. You would always need the help. So that's why it's fun. You're always chasing somebody else, and it makes it really interesting to be competitive, but also really supportive. I find the videography, because it always has to be a collaboration, everybody's working together, and so it makes it a little bit different than photography, where a lot of the time they're just working on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you have any tips for creating space for vulnerability, to share your story and use your voice, whether that be on the internet or with friends or with family?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's heard this one. You just got to record. You just got to click record. And it's true. If you have something to share, go ahead, share it. It's not easy to do, especially being vulnerable. But you just have to remind yourself that it's really important. It's something that we all need. And it's something that definitely has to change, because a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable, because they don't want to be seen as weak. But it's I think of it kind of like the movie Inside Out. They needed sadness in order to also be happy. You need one to have the other. So in order to be strong, at some point you have to be weak. So you don't have to hide that. So keep that in mind when you're trying to be vulnerable. It's okay right now. You're not going to be vulnerable for your entire life. You're going to make a 60-second video, and then you're not going to be vulnerable anymore after that on that specific topic. You'll be strong, and you'll be able to help other people with it.
Beautiful. Any pointers on working in a creative field? How to get in? I guess what it's like.
That's a really tough one. I feel like I got really lucky because of my social media. I was just making my own content. So you have to be really, really good at something, I think. So try to focus on one of those areas. I wasn't super good at the editing side, but I was good at the storytelling side. And so I think that's what really helped me get my job, was I was able to tell stories and structure the videos that way. So you have to get good at something. So if you're really good at color grading, that can get you a creative job.
Yep.
And you may not be very good at the story. You may not be very good at handling a camera. But there's so many different jobs creatively that you can do. So just find one that you're really passionate about and make sure that you absolutely love it. And you have to live, eat, breathe, whatever that is. And a good example, I think, is actually a guy that you should have on this podcast is Silas Snyder. He's a ninja. He's traveling in the States right now, but he's a professional ninja. He got second at the Canada Ninja National Championships 2 years in a row. But I would say he's best overall. And I got to watch him commit his life to something, right? Like he started working at our gym and he just woke up, thought about ninja. And then he was at school, he'd be thinking about ninja. When he was at work, he'd be climbing on things and practicing ninja. And like everything was ninja. And that paid off. So I think when people get into something creatively, that's what you have to do. Like if you're going to become a professional at something, you have to do it all the time. And that's where I was able to kind of excel with the videography is because of the pandemic, I was doing it all the time. If I was at work, all I was thinking about even at the ninja gym was, okay, my next video. Like I'd be doing my work, of course, but I was just constantly reflecting on creative ways to make a video and what I could learn and what I'm lacking. And it was just, I was kind of completely consumed by learning something. So you got to do what it takes to be a professional. And that's, you got to get really good and make some sacrifices in your life to set aside time for whatever it is that you're getting into.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you would like to add to this conversation?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's so much that I could be talking about.
I know.
So it's like if there is, I'm sure there's things, but there's nothing specifically that comes to my mind right now that we didn't touch on. I think we got quite a bit. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm starting this new with our season 2 of the podcast. I'm starting to ask everyone a final question. It's the same question everyone will ask. So say 100 years from now, the Sioux Museum has an exhibit on you. What would the headline be of the exhibit, and what 3 artifacts would be on display?
Ooh, okay. I'll answer the headline one after, but 3 artifacts on display. If they did an exhibit on me, I would probably maybe I'd have to hold on to my original camera. That would be really cool. Okay, like the first camera that I ever got was the M50. It is on the marketplace right now, but it may not sell, so I might have it forever. Or even a lens. I won't be selling a lot of those probably. So either, one of those. This would be interesting, having maybe like a QR code to the video that originally went viral would be really neat. And I think that's something that probably would happen anyway, so that people could watch it. I don't really know if that counts as an artifact, but
yeah, I'll take it.
And then the third one, let's see. If I ever receive something, let's say like an award, for example, on YouTube, you get those plaques.
Right.
That would be a really cool one to put in there as well. I would really have to start pushing for YouTube, but if I had, like the silver plaque in there, I think that'd be a really cool thing to show. And then the headline, it would have to be something associated with grief, I think. Just because that's really what sparked my creativity. I think, I don't know if I ever would have gotten into videography if it weren't for what I went through after the loss of Jasmine. So it kind of like how my mom, her original book is Beauty from Ashes. Like it would have to be like some sort of creativity from grief, or I was going to make this one video as cancer, cameras, and creativity. Something like that.
Perfect.
Yeah. The 3 C's, I guess. And like those were 3 really big aspects of what got me on this journey.
Yeah. Well, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks for coming on here, and you were really thorough with your questions, so it gave me a lot to think about on the spot, and
Good.
This was a lot of fun. This is the first podcast I'd been on, so thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks. Yay!
Oh wow, I can feel
the pressure.
the ears, like I took it off and just